Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Christina Ivler, and today myself and Dr. Irene Raisman will be hosting this webinar. We're both representatives from the Engineering Division of CUR, and the main reason that we're hosting this is to give perspectives on excellence in undergraduate research from 4 Engineering Division Leadership and Mentorship Award winners. We're super excited to have this opportunity to hear from these 4 in engineering. Our panelists are Beena Ajmera, Heather Dillon, Ala Qattawi, and Rana Zakerzadeh. They've been all recognized with awards between 2022 and 24 from the Engineering Division for their exceptional contributions to mentoring and fostering undergraduate research, as well as for leadership in undergraduate research. They're going to share their unique insights and experiences and offer valuable guidance to students and faculty alike. So over the next hour, each panelist will provide a brief overview of their approach to undergraduate research, followed by open Q&A session after all 4 panelists have spoken. If you have a question, as Todd mentioned, feel free to put your question in the chat function, or if you'd like to directly ask your question to our panelists at the end, you can use the raise hand function as well. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you find this webinar interesting and informative. So we're going to present today in reverse alphabetical order. Our first speaker is Rana Zakerzadeh. She's an assistant professor in the biomedical engineering department at Duquesne University. She received her PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Pittsburgh and completed her postdoc research at the University of Texas at Austin. Her research interests involve the development and application of physics-based computational models to gain insights into the biomechanics of vocal folds, as well as cardiovascular-related disorders. She has mentored numerous students on computational biomechanics projects, resulting in their recognition with research awards, both at the university and national levels, as well as co-authorship in journal publications. She has also received several awards and grants throughout her career, including an NSF Career Award. So Rana, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to share my screen. And let me know if it doesn't work. Hopefully it works. So today I want to talk about some of my mentoring approach and my perspective toward undergraduate research and what has been working for me in the last 5 years that I've been at Duquesne, and hopefully that starts some discussion and interesting question and answer at the end. So I have to first say the type of research in my lab basically relates to, am I still sharing my screen? Hopefully, yes. Yes, okay.
The presentation.
Perfect, yeah. I wanted the video to work, thank you. So the type of the project in my lab is different, and based on that, also the mentoring approach that I have for undergraduate changes accordingly as well. There are sometimes that we have one undergraduate that works side by side with me on a project that is already existed, and sometimes also the undergraduate take a bit of like different approach and try to get more ownership on the project, which make them feel more like involved in the project that they do. There are also, in the third case, we have a team that they work together on one project, which makes it fun, but also management between different members of the team might be more challenging. And also the last one, which is my ideal type, but doesn't happen often, is when undergraduate drives the project on his or her own. That probably needs much more time investment, both on undergraduate side and me, and at least they have to be in the lab for 2 years, 4 or 5 semesters, so they can take that kind of ownership of the project. Just to give a bit of background about what type of project I talk about. So in my lab, I mostly work on developing different computational methods and simulations that have a particular application to solve some biomedical problems and answer questions for biomedical systems. In particular, we want to see, for example, how the human phonation work, how the vocal fold function. Or another problem that we take a look is for cardiovascular related disorders, like for aortic valve or for abdominal aortic aneurysm. We wanted to see what's the risk of the rupture or how we can design the valve so it can have a longer life in human body. So for this type of project, I would say definitely, I mean, the way that so far has been worked for me is mostly the type 1, 2, 3, that undergraduate work on a project that already is in the lab, and we just take probably they based on their experiences and how long they work on a project, they take a little bit of ownership of the project in the second year that they work with me. And the picture on top, that is a lab full of computers and chairs, is my lab at Duquesne. As you see in a computational lab, that's all we have. We have computers. We do the simulations for benchmark problems on these computers. And once we are working on more complicated and more sophisticated frameworks, we run them on supercomputers that are outside the lab, but we connect with them with these computers in the lab. So in this framework that I just described, usually it's hard for them to take a new direction as a mentees in the lab, but it's not impossible. So most of the time I didn't have an undergraduate that they come up with the project topic on their own, or they started from zero. We already had a framework, or we already had the ground rule or the background done, and they started to work on that from there. And we all worked it sometimes together, sometimes in groups of 2 or 3, and that's how it worked best for the work I'm doing at Duquesne. But also in number 2, in the point 2 that I mentioned there, to help them in the process and to make the adjustment to the lab and what we do in the lab faster. What I noticed works the best is that if I record some tutorials or the readings or instructions, and I provide them at the beginning of the semester or when they join the lab. And for the first semester, the task would be for them to mostly try to get up to the speed and look at those materials, the tutorials. And in one way, I mean, I used to use emails a lot to send it to every single person in the lab, and it's harder to keep track of and they get lost all the time. So I felt like some of the time using the technology like Box, OneDrive, to have a folder for the lab and have different folders for different like tutorials, different papers from the lab from previous years, or also if I have like them presented undergraduate, they presented in conferences from last year. We have a folder for all of the conferences with abstract, the sample of the posters, the recording of their presentations, all that. That would be super helpful for also the next group that they come to the lab, so they can watch them, look at them, and see really how it has been working for the previous members, and they can also learn the process faster. Also, Zoom tutorials, like making the fast tutorials on Zoom, both worked for me, and also when I want them to ask me a question, in particular for computational work. And I'm not sure how many people here, they have done the same work that is for coding and so, but sometimes asking a question that like why my code doesn't work or why I get this particular like error message, it's very hard to answer it on email, or understand what the question is. But if they just record a quick tutorial or something, a question on Zoom, then I can just look at it and see how it would work and how I can help them to solve the problem. And one thing that I kept in mind is that I ask a student to either register for credit, either if it is a credit or 0 credit, if they cannot take more credit, or I pay them for the work that they do in a lab. For me, I figured out based on like my first couple of years here that volunteers usually won't work much because they don't have much motivation to do the work. It's either if they take it as a credit or paid, they feel much more committed to the project, and we both invest the time in a more productive way. But that might be just my experience. So the previous part was about like how to have the whole, like the framework for having undergraduate in lab, but also I figured out setting up the expectation from both sides really helps in a long-term relationship. I make sure that at the beginning, I really talk to them that what I really hope to get out of this experience and what probably they wish to get out of this experience. So I guide them based on that. And I always talk to them that at the end, we really wish that from this experience that you have each semester, we can get a 2-page write-up. And we have particular format that needs to be followed, and I ask them to also use EndNotes so they get familiar with basically how to use these tools. I also figure that at least, I mean, at Duquesne, we have a very good writing center and library resources that they can schedule a time to just go there and they talk to the undergraduate and they help them to learn the process in writing. They help them in also, like they have lectures how to use EndNotes, different tools, so that would be pretty useful too. And if they want to also find the full, like the articles, the full length, the text, also the library has good resources. In a way of expectation, also talking about what is my style in mentorship and in working, like how you expect the email time works. Like if sometimes somebody respond to emails once in a week or twice a week, probably we cannot work well. I try to respond fast. I expect kind of the same way. And also I felt, you know, another way, if it is not clear at the end, then also I cannot expect them to follow it because they cannot read my mind. So I have to talk about it and we communicate and we get to the good way that works for both of us. The number 4 that I mentioned here, dealing with no time, I think what I learned is that many times I felt I have to meet undergraduate because I have a meeting on my calendar. And later, I figured also this might not be the case. There are different type of, like sometimes based on how the project goes, we might meet more than once a week, and sometimes we might not meet for 2 weeks. So once there is a need, if they need to talk to me, or if I do, we meet, but if not, we just skip the meetings. And number 5, what came to my mind, I mean, one thing that my mentor told me many years back and really affected me, and I like to be the same for my undergraduate, is that always consider what's best for them. Not make sure to always consider their interest. And I try to be the same way by giving them opportunities to go to conferences and help them to submit the application for different fellowships, awards, and all that. And in that way, I feel if I build this relationship in long term, it pays off for both of us. And number 6 that came to my mind is, although I try to always tailor my mentorship to a particular person, of course, one way won't work for every undergraduate, but also sometimes it's good to recognize when something doesn't work and try to have that difficult conversation to not waste their time too, and let them to move on. Probably different lab might be a better match. So that's also, to me, important note. And with that as a summary, I feel like that's a great thing if the relationship works and if they get the help that they need and if they get the mentorship. They definitely, undergraduates can also produce the work that can get published. They can present in conferences. They can publish in good journals, and they can get this confidence that they need that later they take to the next level and progress with that. And in the bottom, that's a word cloud that I took that from the paper I just mentioned there in 2018, that it asked for what are the 3 words that describe a good mentor. And if you take a look at it, I mean, it describes like what the participants said in a large survey. But a few that stood out is patience, communication, and empathy. So I hope we can all be the same with the people surrounding us, so we help them to progress in their life and in their work. Thank you.
Thanks, Rana. That was really interesting, and I'm excited to ask some questions later.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Ala Qattawi. She is an associate professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Toledo. She earned her PhD in automotive engineering from Clemson University, specializing in metal fabrication, and subsequently served as a postdoctorate fellow at the International Center for Automotive Research in South Carolina. Currently, she holds the position of director and principal investigator at the Integrated Design and Manufacturing Laboratory at the University of Toledo. Within her research group at IDM, Dr. Qattawi focuses on advanced and sustainable manufacturing, studying additive manufacturing, foldable metal structures, material design for manufacturing, and manufacturing energy analysis. Her contributions to advanced manufacturing have earned her several awards. There's a very long list, but some key ones is the 2023 Excellence in Supervision of Undergraduate Research, and the Engineering Research Initiation Award from NSF in 2023. So thank you very much, and I'll let you present now.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you everyone for making the time today. Hopefully I'll make it a brief introduction of the methods and approaches I found useful through the years when advising undergraduate students. So my presentation today is talking about a specific approach backed up by research on how to tackle the problems of undergraduate mentoring and to best serve the students. So empowering the students through what we call Appreciative Advising Scheme, or AAS for short. So for the AAS Appreciative Advising Scheme, basically depends on 6 pillars that starts with having a positive interaction with the students, understanding their objectives and per se hopes in order to understand what is the intended outcome they seek after pursuing a research in the undergraduate level. And this, over the years, this can be varying focus for students. Some students comes with the understanding that they do want to go for graduate school, and they use undergraduate research as a stepping stone to understand more about research. Some more needs more application or like research that's more in the applied field in order to understand more in-depth technical aspects. Some can take the research in terms of having a substitute for the mandatory co-op. So they do research co-op instead of mandatory co-op here at the College of Engineering. And some just requires more skills in order to use those in their career. So as you maybe already know that my research is in the intersection between basic and applied research. So we do a lot of manufacturing, additive manufacturing, material characterization, a lot of energy measurement, basically a lot of evaluation and testing that can be done in my lab. And over the years, I found students, particularly coming from a certain classes in undergrad, seeks to know more. So basically, for example, material science classes, mechanical design classes, where they look into how to further analyze the data they learn to gain from certain tests in the basic material science, and what is actually the meaning and the big picture of those tests. So the AAS approach that I found the most effective for my mentoring is starting with having a positive interaction with the students. So usually we have a one-to-one meeting when the student shows interest in pursuing research with understanding of the big picture that they want to seek after finishing certain amount of hours or semesters in the research. And then putting this into a more achievable objectives that's tailored towards what the dream the student is trying to achieve. So are they want to have more manufacturing hands-on experience that entitle them or make them ready for a certain career within the automotive industry, for example. And then we sit back and try to come up with an objective that's achievable within a semester. And usually this is going to be a random objective. It's tied mostly to the research projects I do have currently in the lab. And usually the student sits a couple of times in the group meeting with other graduate students. So they basically can get a feeling of what is the project is about, what are the tests that the graduate students doing, and how their idea of having research can fit within the bigger picture of a big graduate students project. They can be included and have a small part that they can execute and finish. And then we do have at the end of the semester or like the term where the research experience is set to, we do have a deliverables analysis. So I sit with the students and basically discuss what we set at the beginning and what was achieved. And sometimes it's plus minus with understanding that where things went wrong, where things went right, and how we can correct that for the next phase of research if the students is decided to. And then basically, I also keep the undergraduate students acknowledged and having different moving forward projects that actually expands on their work. That also includes publications or conference presentations that were done after they graduate, but they were part of that. So they get to know and see that their work made a difference and their name is there for future encouragement to come back to research in graduate school if they decided to. So majorly the four major components I found to be best focused on when I'm doing AAS is the first thing is to serve the students. So develop competence and purpose. And this comes sometimes easy and sometimes hard for the undergraduate students just based on their understanding of research. So it's not like a class project, it's more in-depth understanding. So we have a set of skills that every graduate or undergraduate students finish first semester in my lab that they have to master. And students are basically, we communicate these needs. So for example, writing papers, what writing paper mean, how to use references, how to reference for other authors' papers, how to think critically about a certain paper that they are presented with. So find where these authors find useful and what the gap in their approach for a certain problem. And then through this gap, the next question is what do you need as a researcher in order to fill this gap, if it's actually within the scope of one semester, and then what tools you need and what tests and experience you need to develop in order to get this competency or this skill within the same amount of time that's described. Of course, it's not an easy task for the students. So sometimes, even for me, I have to also design this, like understand what are the tests they need to do and if they are doable within the time. But we try to work out a project plan that actually fits within the objective that we set at the beginning, and then the knowledge gap that they need to fit, and then they're basically objectives of this going into the research. And then I do have also provide feedback and support for the students across different and frequent phases during the research experience. So we do have, plus the weekly meetings, we do have one-on-one meetings that can basically ask the students for accountability towards research. So they do have deliverables, and then we communicate the due dates and what's expected from those due dates and deliverables, and students basically get to work their way through what's needed to be delivered. And sometimes I think maybe it's also maybe optimistic from my side as an advisor is to tune back and forth these deliverables based on the pace of the project and in the progress that the students were able to achieve. So it's not set in stone. It's always all the time needs to tuning to the current status. And what I found also the most effective and efficient group of researchers, undergraduate and graduate students, was the most diverse that I had through the years in my lab. So fostering diversity and positive environment was a rewarding experience for not just only having a sense of community for the students and they come with positive attitude and loving to come to the lab, but also it's also have a technical output to it that actually meeting deadlines, meeting due dates, and trying to contribute and have a sense of collaboration in the lab was the best when we fostered diversity. And I think also one technical aspect is the research can serve is demonstrating and imposing professionalism and ethics. So, and many times the students go through certificates through the university in order, like, for example, for research certificates, for certain regulations that they have to meet of disposal of certain material. And I think they appreciate that and having it to be some sort of skills building that they were not aware or exposed to through classes only. My intake, or basically positive impact on using AAS approach, is increasing the engagement, which was the key active participation of students in the research. And through engagement, we also, I try to have through the classes and of course undergraduate research, what we call like tours, industry tours. So every time we have a certain problem, so for example, analyzing the casting grain structure for a certain set of furnace parameters, we have a tour through one of the casting foundries here in Toledo, where students get to see the process in action and feel that the decisions or whatever findings they have in the project, they make sense. And then they do have an effect on the bigger picture of a research or like an application field. And many students even join these tours, even if they're not undergraduate students in my research or the class, but just for the sake of getting the exposure and engaging with industry and asking actual engineers in the field about what problems they face and what solutions can be possible, and figuring out that the research is maybe the answer to mend this gap between the problems we face and then the solutions we seek to have. And then finally, what I also found best is all the time after tuning is to measure the success in AAS approach by having surveys for the students, satisfaction surveys, and the bigger picture, maybe as a department or as a college, is to link the participation in research hours or research co-ops or undergraduate research with the retention rates. And at CUR Toledo, we found this to be there's a good connection between increasing the number of students who participate in research to the retention and success and basically satisfaction in the exiting interview after they graduate. So many students find this to be a rewarding experience for them during their undergraduate study. And it also pushes us towards having positive advising outcomes and a rewarding experience for the students. With that, I would thank you for your attention and time. If you have any questions, this is my email. Please feel free to, send me any email after this presentation.
Thank you so much, Ala. That was a great presentation, and I really enjoyed hearing about the appreciative advising scheme. So our next presenter is Dr. Heather Dillon. She is a professor and chair of mechanical engineering at the University of Washington, Tacoma, where her research team is working on renewable energy systems, solid state lighting, energy efficiency in buildings, fundamental heat transfer studies, and engineering education. She holds a joint appointment with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, working on energy efficiency and renewable energy systems. She recently served as the chair of the Council on Undergraduate Research Engineering Division and the Fulbright Canada Research Chair in STEM Education at the University of Calgary, Alberta. Thank you, Heather, and I'll let you take over.
Thank you. Well, I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you all, and the topic that has been of great interest, at least in some of my recent conversations with friends, has been actually focused on a course-based research experience that I developed and have been teaching for the last few summers. So I thought I would share that with you. We call it the Transformation Course-Based Undergraduate Research Experience, or a TCUR, because it's designed specifically for transfer students that are coming into our institution. So for a typical student in this class, they do their pre-major courses at a 2-year institution like a community college. We have a lot in our region. You all probably have many in your regions. And then the summer before they transfer, we invite them all the students that are incoming to our mechanical engineering program and our other engineering programs, electrical, civil. We invite them to participate in this course-based research experience the summer before they come into the program. And we've been very strategic with placing the course on campus. So they're basically on campus early. They're able to get, like their student ID cards, they figure out how to park. And one of the goals of this class is to really help that transition process be a little smoother for our transfer students. And then they, of course, do their normal courses at our institution. And then hopefully, because they have been involved in a research experience early, they might continue their research experiences, and some of them may go on to graduate programs. It's a little early for us to tell that because we've only been running the class for a couple of years, but one of the students from the first offering is thinking about graduate school. So we'll keep you posted on that. So the way the class is structured is pretty important. We're studying water systems. The class right now is structured around water systems. And in particular, we're studying things in the Puget Sound region around autonomous ferries. So you can see lots of water pictures for our students. But it's a 2-credit class, so it's pretty small credit-wise. And we offer it, this is the important part, we offer it in late summer, 1 month before classes start in fall term. And this allows the students to take the class at no cost. They don't have to pay summer tuition. So they can take it right before the fall term starts. It's only a 2-credit class, so we only, we have relatively abbreviated time period. But as long as they're registered full-time in the fall quarter, then they don't have to pay extra for this class. And the class, they actually get their grades in December along with the other fall classes. So I think it's pretty genius, actually, the way the timing of it works out. And of course, one of our goals is to increase retention and success of our transfer students. Oftentimes our transfer students are some of our first-gen students, high income or lower income, higher financial needs students. So we have some cool structures that we put into the class. We're doing a lot of rapid prototyping. One of the things that we developed in the class that's been really fun is students bring artifacts to class. We do this pretty early in the class as kind of a way to get to know everyone. You could think about it as like sophisticated show and tell. But essentially, we're trying to let the students share a little piece of their STEM identity with us early on in the class. This student that's pictured in this picture actually brought in something that he had made when he was a kid that he had actually 3D printed. And so, of course, then as his prototype developed, we encouraged him to take the lead on the 3D printing, because then you can kind of line up student passions with the research projects. The other thing we do is we do a lot of student reflection. So the students write basically a research reflection or a research journal entry every week, the way we structure the course, or every few days. So a big emphasis on building community and making sure the students feel at home in the research process and on our campus. So kind of a cool class. We developed some of these things in partnership with our closest community college. And so a lot of the things we did, they told us were really important for their students. like all researchers, we did send out a little survey to try and get a sense of whether this was whether this was working. The first time we offered the class, we only had 9 students, and we ran it again just recently, and I haven't looked at the results yet. So this is all from the first offering. But we had some really good feedback from the students. Things like, I feel connected to the community I developed in this class. That's pretty powerful for a transfer student, right? Like they're making these great connections. And one of those students actually helped another student find an internship, which I thought was a great example of how they created those connections. So we have some other basic demographic questions in there. These are some of the survey results. The students overwhelmingly were in the somewhat agree or strongly agree for most of the responses. Like class had a positive sense of collaboration and community, lots of opportunities. So we're seeing really good outcomes from this class, at least self-reported on student surveys. And so a couple more student quotes. It helped me learn to quickly prototype and research a topic within a short period of time. These are life skills, that setting them up really well for their junior and senior years in the engineering programs. The second sort of bar chart here is just, again, agreement. I like the student, quotes, great opportunities to build relationships and collaborate. Most of the class time is spent where the students are actually working on the research in small groups of about 3. So they don't spend a lot of time. I don't spend a lot of time lecturing. If there's a topic that they need information on, I will record a video that's 5 or 10 minutes long and post it in the course website so that they can look at that asynchronously. So almost every day the students really spend a lot of time prototyping and brainstorming. So it's going really well. We're going to keep running it. The students really liked it. We're seeing really strong engagement from the students. Some of them continued on. So several of the students started working on some of these early prototyping things and then carried on into our auto ferry work all during this last academic year, which I thought was really great. They really liked the artifact sharing piece of it, which again, we thought that was a really unique feature of this class. And I'd encourage you all to think about doing something similar. And the end of the story is the prototyping is continuing to go really well. So the team from this last summer continued working, and we've made progress. And our autonomous ferry, the latest version of the robot, is down here. I don't know if you can all see this. It looks a little bit like Wall-E from the movie. So I think we're gonna have to get like a cute name for it. But the autonomous ferry pieces of it are working really well, and you can see as the project has evolved, we've got like a little pool to do some testing. We've got all of these students involved. It's turned into a really interesting experience for the students, but also just a really open, very positive community that's doing this work. And I did just want to acknowledge a few of our funding sources. Most of the funding for the project is coming from the U.S. Department of Transportation as part of the REIT Center, so big thank you to them. And we do also have a small piece of funding from the National Science Foundation that's helping us with this innovative class structure. So we're kind of combining some different things. And a big shout out to all the students who took the surveys and did all of the real work. I was not clever enough to put my contact information in my last slide, but I am happy to take questions about this, or if you're interested in replicating it. We did draft a work in progress paper for ASEE this last year, and I'm happy to, I'll see if I can put that in the chat as well if anyone's interested in trying to replicate it. We did it as a work in progress paper, at least in part because we felt like it was going so well that we really wanted to get the word out about this particular way you might structure undergraduate research experiences to really support your students. So again, happy to chat later if anyone would like more info.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's a really innovative approach to undergraduate research, and exciting to see how transfer students can get more involved. Okay, so our last presenter is Dr. Beena Ajmera. And Beena is an assistant professor at the Iowa State University. Sorry, I lost my spot there. And has taught soil mechanics. surveying, engineering, mathematics, geotechnical, earthquake engineering, soil and site improvement, slope stability and retaining walls, and numerical methods. She has received several national and international awards for her research, including, among others, the inaugural award from the International Consortium on Landslides, the Thomas Middlebrooks Award from the Geo Institute, and the Collingwood Prize from the American Society of Civil Engineers. Dr. Ajmera has delivered over 25 invited presentations, and as an assistant professor, she has supervised over 130 high school, community college, undergraduate, and graduate students, and middle and high school teachers on various research projects, which is a really exciting impact. So, Beena, I'll let you take over for your presentation.
Thanks, Christina. Hopefully this is working. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to talk a little bit about my perspectives on mentoring undergraduates in research. Once again, my name is Beena Ajmera. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Construction and Environmental Engineering. I'm going to just start with a little bit of an overview of what I do. I consider myself an advocate for undergraduate research, so I'm going to put a little pitch in as to why everyone should be doing undergraduate research from my own experiences, and then talk about how I approach undergraduate research and some recommendations that I would have. So to dive right in, I just want to point out that I am also a division representative for the Council on Undergraduate Research Engineering Division, and in that role, I have the pleasure of being our liaison to the National Conferences on Undergraduate Research Oversight Committee. And so if anybody is working with undergraduates, now is the time to encourage your students to submit abstracts for that conference as well. I have a very special connection to undergraduate research just because that's how I ended up where I am today. I was very fortunate that a mentor and now a very close friend of mine encouraged me to participate in research in his group when I was a sophomore, and that completely changed the trajectory I had in mind for what I wanted to do. And looking back, I would have been miserable with what I had planned. I really enjoy what I do now. But it led me down this path of going into academia, to being a mentor, and also finding the field of geotechnical engineering within civil engineering as my area of passion. And so I think that there's a lot of benefits to undergraduate research, and I've been trying to pass it on a little bit to the next generation. I know Christina mentioned that I've had the pleasure of working with over 130 students. About 2/3 of those have been from an undergraduate or younger level, and that includes community college students and high school students, as well as teachers that have experience in teaching STEM at middle and high schools. And I find that some of my most exciting work comes from these students and how excited they are. They remotivate me in doing my own research in the different areas. I've also been very lucky that I've had a large number of students that come from underrepresented, underserved populations within engineering, including Hispanic students, African American students, and females. And together, these students have been the driving force for my research program. So they've been co-authors on a vast majority of my publications. They've gone on to get their own awards in different areas. And I think about 50 of those awards have been by undergraduate students that have worked on research with me. For me, I think that undergraduate research is very important, and I think it kind of falls into 4 categories. I will keep this fairly short, but these are from my own experiences. This is not a complete list of all the benefits of undergraduate research. There's a lot of literature around there. CUR's website has a lot of information about why undergraduate research is important. But from my own experiences, I think it falls into the benefits that our students are getting, the benefits that we get as faculty ourselves, and then, of course, the impact it has on the institution and the profession as a whole. Very briefly, for the students, I think it enhances their learning. I think it helps them develop critical thinking skills, learn how to problem solve, and, of course, develops their research skills. I've learned that it improves their academic performance. they delve into a subject, they get excited over it, they do better in their classes, they stay in the program, they graduate. It prepares them for their future careers, whether that's graduate school or the industry. There's just a lot of professional development and growth that goes into sustained undergraduate research work that helps them build their collaboration, teamwork, leadership skills, and personally, their confidence, their motivation, their enthusiasm for the material. And it gives them a chance to network, not just within your own research groups with other students, but also as they go to conferences and local and national events, they get to start building their own networks and start developing those connections. For me, as a faculty member, I find that engaging undergraduates in research helps me be more productive. It gives me a fresh perspective on problems. I am not that in tune with all the latest technology, but the students that work with me on different research projects are, and they come to me with these great ideas that I then can embrace and use, and it excites me. Each of the students teaches me something new. They show me some excitement, and I learn as much from them as I feel like I teach them along the way. And ultimately, it leads to recruiting graduate students that become a part of my group and that stay longer or go into colleagues groups and collaborate with me. I'll go a little faster on the institution and the profession. I think that the benefits we give our students and the benefits we get help our institutions, the research productivity, the improved student success leads to a better connection with our alumni, which promotes our own programs and our own university in the long run. And then they are the driving force of the innovation that we do, and they end up we're helping develop the next workforce, hopefully with very different perspectives that can shape the way that we advance. So my approach to mentoring, I think, can be boiled down into 4-ish bullet points over here. The first one is something that was said earlier. Rana said that there's a need for personalized guidance. Each of the students in our groups are individuals that have their own career aspirations, their own goals, and we can't have a one-size-fits-all mentoring approach. Each student needs their own individual tailored approach. For me, that comes from having weekly individual meetings with all of my students. We not only talk about the research that they're doing, but what are their career aspirations in the short term? Do they want to publish? Are they thinking about grad school? Are they thinking about internships? How can we merge what their goals are with what I would like to accomplish within my research group? And what resources and support can I provide to help them reach those goals? Part of that is helping them develop their skills, not only as being, great researchers in my group, but also the professional skills that they're going to need in order to succeed. And so this can be from training them how to use experimental laboratory equipment to analyzing data, using computer programs, writing, and even presenting, and then giving them opportunities to do that. So public speaking as an example, in my group, we have weekly group meetings, and every week there's a different person that presents. Both undergraduate and graduate students are expected to have a presentation, and it's a chance for them to see, oh, this person did this really cool thing with their presentation. How can I learn from it? Or I learned a little bit about this technical topic that this student was talking about. I also want them to have a life outside of the research that they're doing. They're taking courses, they're participating in student organizations. And so part of the skill development is helping them balance all of the time commitments and encouraging them to do some of those other things, because those perspectives affect the research that they end up doing with me. I really strongly believe in scaffolding within the research group, and I don't mean in terms of years within the group, but just in terms of expertise. And so I usually pair every new student with an existing student in my research group. It's not necessary that an undergrad student is going to get paired with a graduate student, but it could be that a graduate student is learning from an undergraduate student who has more expertise on using a particular piece of equipment, for example. And so I want to encourage this peer-to-peer learning where they're helping each other and they're growing together. And there is this, the more you become an expert at something, the more responsibilities you have, the more opportunities you have to share those knowledge that you've gained. And so I want to make sure that there's opportunities for the students to grow, to continue to build their skill sets, to continue to advance both technically and in their skills that they're developing that are the professional arena. So this means that I encourage them to go to conferences, to participate in student competitions, to publish in journals or in conferences. I try to invite colleagues for networking opportunities for those students and just engage them in the various things that are going on campus or around the country. So if you're thinking about engaging students in research and undergraduates in particular, I just have a few recommendations based on what has worked for me. I'm not saying that this is an inclusive list of everything that works or that, you know, if you follow these, it will be perfect, because it does need to get tailored to the students you're working with and to your own style of mentoring. I think that, like has been said before, it's good to start with very clear objectives and manageable milestones of what you want the students to accomplish. This could be, you know, I want this test, I want you to learn how to run this experiment in the next 2 weeks, for example. Or it could be like, hey, let's target having this published in a journal by the end of the semester, and just giving them what they need to do along the way to get to that point. I also want to create an environment where they feel supported, where they can come talk to me. They have regular check-ins with me. Like I said, I meet with all of the students individually once a week, and then I meet with my whole group in one room where they present and chat and interact with each other also once a week. And these are places where I can check in and see how they're doing on an individual basis, but then also where they can get constructive feedback, not only from me, but from others in the group, and learn from each other. I give them opportunities to be trained on different methods and data analysis. A student that's doing numerical work will get opportunities to go and do experimental work and vice versa, just so that they can build out their own skill sets and be a more well-rounded civil engineer. And that requires me to have collaboration within my research group. I encourage them to work together and not be, you know, secretive of their work, to share it amongst themselves and to help, like, hey, I went to this conference and I did this presentation and here are my slides, or I saw this presentation about something that you're doing here. This might be helpful to you. And just say, hey, I saw you present this, you could do this differently, in a nice, constructive way. And I want to recognize that. I want to reward that. I want to, you know, encourage them to be good mentors, to be good leaders, but also to be productive in the sense that we are looking at, from papers and presentations and going after fellowships or travel stipends or other forms of funding to support that research. I've learned that there are a lot of resources at a lot of different institutions, and it's a great way to leverage those. Some work study programs, for example, are a great way to stretch the dollar that you have from grants or your incentive accounts or anything like that to support these students, and you can have a more sustained support system. The other thing that I would recommend is to not look at challenges as a setback, but as a place to look at, build curiosity, to learn and to grow. And I like going to students and saying, hey, I didn't expect that. Here's what I think we should do about this. And here's how I'm learning from it, and being a role model instead of saying, oh, you did this wrong, and here's what you should have done, because I don't think that is a productive conversation. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, is make sure that you're tailoring the way you're mentoring the students to the goals of the student. I think we need to recognize that each student is an individual and they have different goals, and it's not a one size fits all. And then, of course, being encouraging them to present and disseminate and publish their work in a variety of different ways. I know some individuals be like, oh, an undergraduate student can't write that paper. And to me, it's like, well, let's let them try, and then we can help them revise it and make it better and get it to that level of publication. And then the last piece of advice I have is, regardless of what method you use, you have to be ready to adapt. I think that there's a lot of things that come expectedly or unexpectedly, and you need to change your style in order to meet the needs of the student, but also what's happening in the world around you. So with that, I know I went rather quickly, but I'm going to say thank you all for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Feel free to email me with those as well. I didn't put my email address at the end, but I'll stick it in the chat for anybody that's interested.
All right. Thank you, Beena, and thank you to all our presenters. It was great to hear from all of you about your approaches to mentoring undergraduate researchers. I think we covered a lot of different areas. So we have a few minutes here before we wrap up the webinar, where we could take questions from the audience as well. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat now or raise your hand, and we can take audience questions too. I know there were a couple questions that came up in the chat for Heather. I think she already addressed those. But since I don't see additional questions right now, maybe I'll ask a quick follow-up. So did you find that students in the TCUR program were more likely to get involved in other research too, as well as continuing the project that they started in the CUR?
Yeah, so we had 9 students in the first offering of the class, and about 4 of them continued on into like a longer version of the related project or a different project. So yeah, I think, that was a pretty good statistic, we thought, for the first round. And they're currently seniors, so they still might also re-engage this year.
Yeah, that's great to hear. If I don't see specific audience questions, I'll also ask one question to the panel in general, or Christine, actually, or Christy, you have a question here.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know that Rana mentioned this, but I heard a lot of you mentioning like meeting with your students one-on-one every week. And I'm just curious, like how you find time to do that and how you manage, all of your students at the same time. Just kind of a question to the whole panel.
Well, I can start with an answer. So for me, I set up a when to meet or a doodle poll at the beginning of the semester, and I just ask for students to submit like all of their availabilities. I've found it most useful if I have all of the meetings for my students on one day. So this semester happens to be Thursday. So I meet with all of the students in my group at different times during the day on Thursday, and our group meeting is also on Thursday. And so that's just the one day that I end up meeting with everyone. Typically, the undergraduate students and graduate students is a 30-minute meeting, so it's not a full hour. If I have a student that's doing a thesis and they're graduating, whether that's an undergraduate student or a graduate student, that meeting turns into an hour for that semester, just so they have the extra support and the time to get my advice and mentorship. Sometimes the meetings take the whole half hour. Sometimes they take 10 minutes. And so I always just have them in my office so that if we're done, I can go back and answer emails or go work on something else if I need to. But it's just a fun part of my week that's just scheduled, and nobody else can schedule anything else there, at least for me.
Yeah, for me, we do have, I do schedule like a research office hour, like, the teaching office hour. I do have a research office hour. Usually this is on Wednesday afternoon. And especially undergraduate students just knows that it's a walk-in. if they need help or they need to discuss anything, I'll be in the office and they just definitely can reach me.
Same for me, as I said. So I have 1.5 hours per week, just for 1 day per week, because we're teaching 3 courses per semester and 16 undergraduate, I cannot find more time. So for that 1.5 hours, I talk to them all and see what the projects are going. I ask if someone needs more help, they come to me, but I don't talk to 16 person per week. It's just not doable.
I think everybody covered it all, but I see somebody else has a question. So.
Yeah, and I see Michael has a question. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry to put us over time. I'm Michael Louis from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. In my experience, undergraduates who are lead authors on papers often have difficulty continuing their involvement past the end of the semester or the end of the year. They've graduated, gone to industry. How do you continue to get them involved with the long process of the journal publication, especially if they're the lead author?
That's a very good question. I would like to answer that because I dealt with it at least twice, and currently I'm dealing with that too. So even if it's a fantastic undergraduate, once they graduate and they go either for PhD or they get a job, they really don't have time to get back to paper. And we recently got the reviews back for one paper that basically it needs a lot of more work to be done. So what I told her, we had a quick conversation on Zoom. And I told her, if she can't work on it, I totally understand, but then I have to put someone else as a first author to continue the job. So if she's fine to lose her first author spot, that's how we can continue. And I know different labs have different policies for sure, that's fine. But I feel like although it's not fair on them to work without getting paid or they have a job, also as an advisor, we also need to get the paper out. So it's not the priority for them probably right now, but you can probably just do the best you can at the situation. If the reviews are minor, of course, maybe you can handle it. I can handle it on my own, but sometimes it's just too much work and you need to add someone else to the paper. I like to see what other people have done because I had this problem at least twice.
I can comment. I've been very lucky in terms of the group of students I have, at least, that I still interact with a lot of the undergraduate students that have worked with me over the years. I get, a yearly update from them on what they're doing and how they're doing. And so I feel like it's been a really good relationship in terms of seeing how they're progressing. In terms of the publications and addressing the review comments, I found that the students are vested in getting that publication. And so they took the initiative of writing it. They're excited about it. It was a career aspiration, a goal for them, and they have ownership of it. And so they are involved in that process, and I don't have to go, hunt them down, so to speak, to finish off the reviews and to address the comments. I do feel that sometimes it's a priority, like they're working in industry, they might have other responsibilities, and I talk to them about like what can we do to help them manage that? Like how can, what are some comments that they're not going to be able to address without extensive help from me, or that they just don't have the time to address, and those I will take on, or I will have another student help with taking those on as a way of mentoring that other student in how the publication process works, and then let them continue from there. But we just work and try to work around those. I've also learned that sometimes it helps to go to a journal and say, hey, instead of 2 weeks to turn this around, we need, a month. And that gives the student a little bit of additional time. It's not the same timeline, but it gives the student the opportunity to be part of that process. And that's just my approach to it. So.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think what I just want to add to it is, as an assistant professor, also the time is mattering for us too. Of course, the difference between 2 weeks and 1 month is totally fine, but sometimes they might need 3 months to complete the work. And, on a tenure track, you also care about turning it fast and also get the paper out. So I think eventually we try to find a balance that works best for both.
Yeah, I agree with both of the approaches. Actually, once we know that the student is actually submitting a paper in my group as a lead author, as an undergraduate student, I ask them to pair with a student who's actually going to be in the group for next semester, and then they will be a co-author in the paper. And this way you get someone who's involved from the beginning, and then they can carry on the authorship if we need to.
Yeah, those are all great suggestions. And I know we've run past 3 p.m. right now, and I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. But thank you again to all of our speakers, and thank you to our audience. And I hope you all enjoyed learning a little bit about mentorship here in the engineering division.